encourage seeing the sign and its message that racism has no home in our community in Rowayton. But that's not why I'm here tonight. I'm here because over the past few months, I have heard story after story from my Black neighbors and other community members of color about what the sign means to them. And I have heard them speak about the racism that they have encountered in Rowayton and share that the sign gave them a sense of belonging in our community, in some cases for the first time. And for me, those personal stories, which I've heard at the protests, on social media and in conversations with my neighbors, those are why the sign is, in my opinion, so important to our community, not because of my comfort and preferences as a white person. The existence of racism in our community is clear and undeniable, and that is the case in every community, and Rowayton is no exception to that. And a sign, of course, is not going to solve the problem of racism, but it communicates a powerful message that moves us in the right direction toward the work that must continue, that we all must do to show that Rowayton stands against racism. I guess my question to the commissioners is, how can you bring support to this grassroots effort beyond your statement supporting the sentiment of Black Lives Matter? How can we work together rather than shutting this effort down? Is there a way that we can collaboratively lift up this important message in our community? I know that it's been suggested before that people can put up individual yard signs, and I'm proudly one of the people who have done so. But this sign on the fence or in another visible public location sends a different message. It's, to me, it's a message about what our community stands for, not one individual or family's beliefs. And the visibility of this sign is different than my sign in my yard on my dead-end street. Whatever the concerns may be, whether it's about the 2-week limit, I know that that's not going to be up for discussion in this meeting, and I understand that. But whether it's the 2-week limit or some other reason why the sign can't continue to be posted on the fence, my hope is that we can have a discussion that is in the spirit of collaboration, and that we can look toward listening to the stories of our Black and other people of color who are Rowayton residents, and use those to guide the discussion as it moves forward. To me, that's at the heart of what this movement is about. And my hope is that we can find a way to come together to show that racism has no home in our community. So thank you.
Thanks, Allison, for your comment. I think our next speaker will be Priscilla Farrell.
Can't hear her.
Okay, my topic was how people get into the meeting, because there were a couple of people who requested to get in that didn't receive the link even today. And then getting into the meeting tonight, you know, there were people in email that hadn't been admitted, and you started the meeting and I was already in. And I'm just wondering what our process is for assuring that the people who want to participate are able to.
Well, the procedure in general is a Zoom meeting has to be set up by the host, the 6th taxing district, and then people that want to attend have to email us for the link. That's the process for any Zoom meeting. And then once they have the link, the email address, they just click into it and they're welcome to join the meeting.
Right, but there were a couple of people that didn't receive the link.
Well, if
who were residents, and so I sent the link to them, and then they had trouble getting into the meeting. And I just wondered how we can assure that everyone that's following what you're asking has access to the meeting.
Well, if they, I don't know if you can forward the link, Priscilla, that's beyond my technical knowledge, but if you know that they're not on the meeting now and they want to be on the meeting, they could email Mike Barbas at mbarbas@rowayton6td.com, and perhaps he can load them right now.
Okay. If they can hear this.
I mean, there's no one waiting to join the meeting based on what I can see here. And we have 74 participants, and the link was posted on our website. Been posted on our website for at least 24 hours.
Okay. Would you like to make another comment, Priscilla?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Our next speaker is Mirvet Fuqua.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
You should be able to speak, Mirvet.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Mirvet Fuqua, and I live on Burchard Lane. I've been noticing all these messages on the Nextdoor app, and as well hearing comments from neighbors. I wanted to, give my little input as to the issue of the fence and the sign. I've seen a posting today on Nextdoor where somebody addressed that the school field is property of Norwalk and part of Park and Recreation, and that the budget basically takes care of the field is from the City of Norwalk Park and Recreation Department. Therefore, the fence should be basically the guidelines should be dictated by the City of Norwalk and etc. So at this point I am clearly somebody who is against racism in any shape and form. I am myself a member of a minority. I am an Arab heritage. I am a Muslim. I have been subject in many places to racism and discrimination in New York City when I first came in the early 90s. I have worked in the jewelry district, so I was among Jewish people. Many of them welcomed me, many of them did not. And you know what? I survived, I still survive, and I have no objection to anybody having their own opinion and their own feelings. There's a crisis in the world. It's not only in the United States only. There's a crisis in Europe. There's a crisis in Australia. There's a crisis in China. There's a crisis anywhere you look, there's a crisis. What I object is to the sign itself of BLM, that is a logo of that organization that stands for things that I believe a lot of people do not stand for. What I'm all for is to voice an anti-racism message. We can put a sign up there that says, we stand with the African-American community. We love everyone. We can put a sign of two hands holding the planet. We can do any of that. But as far as putting a logo of an organization that is pushing and bullying an agenda that is disseminating discontent around the US continent, and it's creating a little bit of chaos, I'm against that. I'm all about fighting for inequalities, fighting in any way we can, funding agencies, giving money, helping any organization. They don't have the support of a lot of agencies that fight against racism for, over 100 years. And I don't see why we should specifically put that sign up rather than putting a general message. We love African-American, we stand for equal rights, we stand for protecting their rights, we stand for all that. That's all I want to say. And, I welcome comments against my opinion, for my opinion. I don't, at this point, we are free to live our life and to feel and to think how we think. And I don't think I believed when I moved to the United States as a student that I came here to encounter a communism attitude where people bully you into thinking what you need to be thinking and doing what you need to be doing. That's not the name of the game. in America. Unfortunately, capitalism creates a lot of inequalities. We can fight all we want. The system is the system it is. We can all voice our opinion. We can all participate in communities, in any organization to give help, to provide help, whether it's with legal help. If you are a lawyer, you can go and do voluntary work. You can be a volunteer at school level. You can volunteer to sponsor helping a kid who is in a disfavored neighborhood. You can do all those things. And just as far as a sign at the entrance of the city, of the town, or the city of Norwalk, or the city of Stamford, or anything, I do not think that, you know, it speaks for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, someone has requested to speak, but they don't have a name. They're just under iPad.
Hi, sorry, that's me. My name is Rachel. I live in Norwalk. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Could you give your address, please? Because we're required to request them.
I live at 399 Main Avenue.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And your last name?
Takacs, Takash.
Okay, thanks.
I want to say that I really don't agree with what, I'm sorry, Marivet, I think that's how you say your name. I don't agree with what you're saying. First of all, Black people are not all from Africa. So I think that's the reason why the term Black is used so often, is because they're not all from Africa. And on top of that, I think if we're anti the Black Lives Matter message, that kind of seems just like you're anti-Black people, because the Black Lives Matter message is not against any other race. It is just showing that people have been treated like they were not equal, basically for all of American history. So for us to try and say that we're going to do less than that because we don't want to be associated with the Black Lives Matter movement, when we were initially, because the sign was up before and agreed to put up before, I don't know why we would change it to try and I'm sorry, like agree with 6 families that complained about this. Like, to me, there's 70, 80 people on this call right now. Of course, they're not all on my side, but I do think the majority are. And I do think that the majority speak, and they, you know, Rowayton is a very white area. And we want to show that just because we are a privileged area with a lot of, you know, a good amount of money, and yes, I know I don't live in Rowayton, I live in Norwalk, we want to make a stand and show what matters. And I think there's a 3-minute limit, so that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel, for your comments. I don't see anyone requesting to speak, but put in the chat room if you do. It's a little hard to page down.
Oh, Rob wants to speak. Rob Pratt.
Rob Pratt, okay. Give me a second. There we go. Okay, Rob, you have the floor. Pratt. Give us we know your name.
1 Farm Creek Road. So anyway, I've been a resident of Rowayton for almost the majority of my life. My grandparents' parents come from this area. My parents decided to come back here and raise me and my sister here. I love Rowayton. My family loves Rowayton. And we have always been a community that was welcoming. Yes, working white class privilege in the beginning when I was a kid, and it's gotten richer since, more privileged since, but it's also gotten more diverse. And I think it's important because I've heard from some of our neighbors that this matters to them. They're just afraid to speak up because they just want to keep a low profile and not raise the ire of their neighbors. I think it's an important thing for us to show that we are welcoming. I understand that there are certain parameters around the signs that are displayed on the fence. And I would just want to say that I think Allison did a marvelous job in articulating a lot of the things that I feel in a much better way than I could. And I agree with her that if there is a sticking point that raises the ire of so many people, mostly through social media, that Black Lives Matter is that much of an inflammatory statement that there needs to be a negotiation or collaboration around another thing that emphasizes our desire to see equality for our Black neighbors and people of community, then we should do that collaboratively. But honestly, there's just way too much misinformation around tying a global, decentralized grassroots movement that people are voicing their support that Black people should be treated equally as we all are, right? That this shouldn't be tied with the organization and whatever people dredge up or misinform about that organization. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Rob. Our next speaker will be Ivy Wappler.
Hi guys, my name's Ivy. I hope you can hear me. I live at 14 Pine Point Road. I'm here with Charlie and Penny Carroll. We're having a garage viewing party here. Apologies for the bad light, but Charlie's gonna just say something quickly and then we're both gonna talk. It won't be too long.
Sure, I will echo what was just said and was said earlier by Allison. Again, was remarkably articulate. I do think this represents an opportunity to figure out as a community a way to state the obvious, which is that we are welcoming, and that includes Black lives. And it does not necessarily have to include Black Lives Matter, but to have gone through this process of removing it because people were pushing back on it, it highlights and brings into very sharp focus a need for the town, and frankly an opportunity really, which is a simple one, which is to say we welcome people here. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Charlie. Our next speaker is
Mike.
I gotta find her.
I think you wanted to.
Ah, there you are.
Hi.
There you go.
Hi there, everybody. Thank you so much, Mike. Tammy, do you want to say something?
Sure.
Okay. I'm just going to go. Thank you so much for allowing us to have this opportunity. I just want to say, as a longtime resident of Rowayton, I cannot say enough praises about the warmth that I have received as a person of color in town since the day one, since setting foot on, firm property here and buying a house. I love it here. I feel like my neighbors are welcoming. We've had amazing events. People have just really gone out of their way to make me feel like a cherished neighbor, including, I want to say, a shout out to the police department, okay? Because I had a relative die in my home in the early aughts, and Officer Joe, if anybody remembers Officer Joe, who was our community policing officer, came to my house and stayed with me that day and that entire night until family could arrive. He would not leave. So I have just had great experiences. I have to say, this is the first time that I have ever felt just as though there's a little bit of tone deafness about the meaning of Black Lives Matter as a sentence. I think, there is, I agree, a lot of misinformation on both sides. And I just don't want us to jump to a spurious conclusion before we have fully vetted what people really want. And I love that we're having a democratic forum to talk about this tonight. And that is that nobody cares about the organization itself. The people, and it wasn't me, I had nothing to do with the people who went out and purchased the sign and the wonderful people who erected it and developed the campaign to raise money for the Carver Foundation to replace the vandalized signs, so on and so forth. But I joined in at some point. And I think that everyone feels as though this isn't about supporting an organization, and this isn't political. You can be on either sides and think that Black Lives Matter. And there was a court case in 2017 in the Federal District of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where a judge struck down someone trying to sue a police department over the Black Lives Matter name, they struck it down because they said, look, this isn't politics. This is a sentence, Black Lives Matter. Of course, since then, we know that Black Lives Matter has turned into the Black Lives Matter Global Network, blah, 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 organization, and they're in court again over it. But we're not about that in Rowayton, and we never have been. We are only about love and inclusivity. And all I want to know is that we have support to promote that. And yes, the fence has had rules. The rules have been broken on and off over the years, and people they've been told that they can't put up political signs. And I get that. And maybe some of those people that didn't get to put up, their Hillary sign or their Trump sign or whatever it was are upset, and they deserve to be upset. But I don't think this is political. I think this is about all of humanity, and anyone looking at TV and seeing someone step on someone else's neck, regardless of they stole a piece of candy or, they robbed $1 million. It just isn't the way our justice system works. And so I think the initiative in people's minds behind the sign isn't the organization. It's really about making sure that we bring awareness of diversity and inclusion to town. And I will say that even though I've had only great experiences here, I don't think we've ever done that as a group. And I think that it's time we do. I have a lot of Black neighbors, and I think they all feel the same way. And when I say a lot, there's, probably less than a dozen or so of us in town, but, we want to be heard. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Shar. And Chris Dempster will be our next speaker.
Hi, good evening. Chris Dempster. I live at 9 Crest Road here in Rowayton. I just want to say, I agree with the sentiments of Black Lives Matter. I think it's a really important message to send out. I think it's a great thing for Rowayton to put that message out, and we are a very welcoming community from all that I can tell. I just wanted to sort of voice my opinion. BLM, as has been mentioned a few times, has a specific connotation to it, and rightly or wrongly, it does, for whatever reason, have a bit of a polarizing effect on people. And so, it does have that effect on me and a number of people I live with and hang out with. So the last thing I want to see when I drive home at the end of the night is a sign for what I deem a politically based organization greeting me. I again don't disagree with the sentiment at all, and I think there might be a better way for Rowaytonites to express their openness and willingness to let people of any race, color, creed, sexual preference, whatever that might be, live amongst us and be part of our community. So I agree with Mirvay's sentiments she expressed early. To me, it's not about pushing back against the Black Lives Matter and no racism and equality, but for me, it's about the message that BLM, the capitalized letters, the proper organization sends, and it sends, to me, in my opinion, a very polarizing message. So I would like to find a better way and a better signage to put up there that sends that sentiment. So thank you.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much. We're going to go back to Ivy Wappler because I think I cut her off, I'm afraid.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. We have multiple people to a screen, so didn't mean to cut the line or anything. Yeah, I just want to express my support for the sign. I was really heartened when it came up as a big supporter of the movement. I think there's a lot of polarization right now around Black Lives Matter as an organization. And I just want to remind people that Black Lives Matter is actually a quite decentralized movement and grassroots movement. There happen to be a couple organizations that sort of hit the top of the list when it comes to what is associated with Black Lives Matter. But it's not only that Black Lives Matter Global Network that you might be familiar with, it's also predominantly one of them called the Movement for Black Lives. And they all sort of stand for different things, and none of them are explicitly political, as in they are advocating for a certain candidate or party. And so I just think we're all due for a little bit of a reminder that the global movement in defense of Black lives that surged this summer was out of a need for an acknowledgement of the specificity of the experience of a Black American and Black people in general. And I think a statement of solidarity from Rowayton is really important. Also briefly to touch on the debate about whether or not the sign is political. There actually happens to be a federal precedent to our situation that happened just this summer in July. The Hatch Act is a law that prohibits federal employees from being political at work or advocating for specific parties or candidates at their federal job in order to deliver federal programs in a nonpartisan way. And the Office of Special Counsel is a independent watchdog agency, a federal watchdog agency that is in charge of the Hatch Act and regulating it, putting it into enforcing it. And they came out with a memo in July that stated that Black Lives Matter terminology and Black Lives Matter Global Network, the organization, are not explicitly or inherently political. So they did an investigation and they determined that. And so because lots of federal employees wanted to display Black Lives Matter terminology, et cetera, or anti-Black Lives Matter terminology at work, and the federal agency decided that they could. So I can send along that memo for everybody's information. I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Thanks, Ivy. Does anyone else from your group want to make a statement?
I think we're good, but thank you.
Okay, great. I think that's it for all our public comments based on
Somebody, a mic. Somebody else.
Yeah,
raised
Tammy?
their hand.
Oh,
Susan
Susan
Edwards.
Edwards. Hold on, Susan. Hold on, it's easier if I do it.
I unmuted myself, Mike.
There you go. Good.
I just wanted to,
Please say your address.
10 Panora Street. I just wanted everyone to know that the New Canaan Library is doing a wonderful series on racism in America. And they had their first Zoom meeting actually it was a YouTube meeting. A professor from Virginia spoke about racism in New England. And there was a Q&A. It was absolutely fantastic, informative hour spent. And there's 5 more sessions. And I encourage people to, at their leisure, you can pull up and watch that particular, it's New Canaan Library, Racism in America series. And I'm sure the other ones that follow. The whole community's become involved. New Canaan Historical Society, the religious organizations, the Y. I was profoundly impressed. Thank you.
You're welcome. I believe Caitlin, is that you would like to speak?
Sure, thank you. Hi, this is Caitlin Hurling. I'm on 2 Memory Lane in Rowayton. Thank you for holding this forum. I would like to publicly express my support for the sign, strong support. I've been to all 3 protests or marches that have been held in response to the taking down of the sign, and really want to thank, if any of the organizers of those are on the call, they've been tremendously positive, tremendously proactive, and well organized, so thank you. 2 things, the only things I want to point out are things that haven't already been said, but the people of color and Black people I've spoken to at those marches feel really strongly that first the defacement and then the removal of the sign is a microaggression, if not a straight out aggression against Black people in this community. And I think we need to think really seriously about whether or not our comfort with a political saying is more important than the feelings and reactions of those people of color in our community. And then second, I think for me personally, a lot of my upset at this process has been around the removal of this without kind of the incorporation or explanation by the commissioners to the larger community. I think if a couple families' discomfort is enough to get the signs taken down, there should be a process where other families can come forward and express their support and maybe even petition to get it put back up. So I'd appreciate if following this meeting, we don't have to wait another month to try to put that into action. And if clear steps can be put forward to the larger community and not just those who reach out privately to the commissioners, it might be a good step forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. Our next speaker is Lauren.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Lauren Henry, 26 Bryan Road. I don't want to take up a lot of time. Everyone has pretty much very eloquently said what I want to say, which is just that I support the sign. I support the members of our community that I know exist who don't feel comfortable speaking out, the people of color who I know. And so I just want to say in support of them that they want the sign up. And so therefore I want the sign up, support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Our next speaker is Lily.
Hi, I'm Lily, and this is my husband, Matt. We just both have a couple things to say. First of all, I am one of the people who posted on Nextdoor about putting the sign back up, and it's been challenging with a lot of negative responses. I do want to say that we got a lot of private messages from people of color who said that they did not feel comfortable coming forward to say that they wanted the sign to be put back up because they didn't feel safe. And so just on their behalf, I want to make sure that everybody's aware that people of color really do want this sign up, and they are not feeling safe to say so in this form or any other. I just want to make that known. We also collected petition signatures at the last event. And so far we've got about 65 signatures in support of putting 61 in support of putting the sign back up. I don't know how much that means to the powers that be, but I think that that speaks to, the community support, at least some of it. And then you want to say a few things.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions. First, I really wanted to thank Caitlin for raising the procedural issue. I think that's very much to the point. I wanted to address a couple questions to the commissioners. One, how do you propose to decide this issue? Do you make anything of these suggestions that perhaps we engage in some larger initiative to make sure that Rowayton is a supportive place, a welcoming place? Whose jurisdiction is this fence? It seems that it is something which Norwalk residents have some interest in. Why it is the commissioner's decision and theirs alone to rule on this seems a little bit odd to me, if I'm honest, because some of the taxpayers who presumably pay for the maintenance of that park don't have a vote, as far as I'm aware, on their offices. So that seems a little bit strange. Let's just add a couple quick things. First, I would like to encourage others who maybe won't get a chance to speak tonight to not let that be all that there is. Please find other forums, come to future meetings, speak on the topic, continue to speak on this topic if it's one that matters to you and you feel like you still have more to say. I think that ultimately this won't happen unless we all continue to do that. So it's very important as allies that we do such things. And finally, I'll just say, imagine that this gets written up on Wikipedia, right? I mean, there's a lot, like rubber hits the road when this starts to become something that Rowayton becomes known for. And I don't think that anybody from a moral perspective, from a financial perspective, would want that to happen for Rowayton to earn that kind of reputation. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do something like this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for speaking. I believe Nora King wants to, or Liz Beinfield had asked to speak. I'm sorry. Liz?
Hi, I would love to know, I don't know Lily's husband's name, but I thought that his questions were really interesting, and I wanted to know if you could address those this evening about why the commissioners have the jurisdiction over the sign and over the fence. And is it just the commissioners, or is there somebody that's the fence person that gets to decide who takes things off the fence? It seems that in years past, there have been political statements that were posted on the fence. And I would love for the commissioners, if you have the ability to tonight to answer those questions. And I also wanted to say that I don't remember her name, the first speaker. She was so eloquent, and I support everything that she said. Are we muted? What's happening?
No, I think you're still on, Liz.
Okay. So is it possible for the commissioners to answer any of those questions this evening?
Yes. Yes. Why don't we wait until we have all of the comments and then we can try to answer some of those questions.
Okay. What did Tammy say?
Do we have any more speakers?
Oh, I think there was one more speaker. I think Nora King.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, I muted. Good evening, everyone. I am a supporter of anything that would go on that's anti-racism. I do have some concerns now about the whole Black Lives Matter, based on doing a lot of research and what is, you're reading about how they structured their nonprofit. I think there's better ways of doing it than going against a process that's been loved in Rowayton for a very long time. There have really never been political signs on that fence since I've lived here. I know that if they've gone up, they've come down very, very quickly. I know the fence has been here to help raise money for the RCA, for the library, many of these organizations who give a lot back to the community. And their sole purpose is to buy sound systems for Brian McMahon and Norwalk High School and Carver Center, and there's been food kitchen drives, everything else that have benefited from a lot of the fundraising that goes up with the signs that do get posted on there. I think having yard signs, I don't think saying they're on a dead end road. We have a lot of busy roads in the city, in Rowayton and the surrounding areas, and to do a yard sign movement, I certainly would rather see those signs than seeing actually the political candidate signs right now. So I think that all this that's been going on the fence is sort of unfair. And I think some of the comments that have been directed and the hostility at the commissioners has been unfounded. And honestly, my kids were with their father this weekend and they were down walking home from Bailey Beach while the protest was going on. And there were a lot of things that they heard, and they're 8 and 12, that were very disturbing to them. People were shouting to them about taking over houses that we live in, things like the KKK. My daughter's 8. I was sort of appalled by the messages that there was a lot of Trump arguing going on. There was some, I'm a Democrat, so, yelling about Trump is a good thing for me, but I think this organization has made it political, and it does not belong on a fence, which is supposed to be doing birthdays and anniversaries and supporting the RCA and the fire department and the police department and the things that we raise money for and we've done for years. And I think there's a different way that we can go about racism and promoting racism. We do a lot in Rowayton. When I hear some people talking tonight that say we don't, I find that unfounded, because I feel like we, as community leaders, we do a lot here to support all sorts of causes. Okay, thanks, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. I think that's it for public comments at this point.
Oh.
Oh, looks like Ethel Schatz wants to say something.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. Okay. I'm Ethel Schatz, Hostrom Place, 52 years in Rowayton, and it gets better and better. I got a little confused between what's legal in Rowayton, but what is justice in Rowayton. As far as I know, Well, Black Lives Matter possibly started in 1614 when the first slaves were brought. That's a pretty long time to wait for Black Lives Matter, a very long time. Whether it makes some people impatient or not is not the issue. The issue may be something is legal, but it may not be right. The Supreme Court many years ago said separate and equal, but it never became equal. That being the case, there was something that was legal, but it certainly wasn't right. I think one of the nicest things in Rowayton is the pageant every Christmas. That's on public lands. I know I learned that there was a difference, and should be a difference, between religion and the state. But I don't object, but I think that's probably wrong to have the pageant on public land. When my temple has once a year one of its services for a spring festival time at Pinckney Park, I'm sort of a little uncomfortable with it because that sounds to me like religion and state are again not separate. And certainly, but it's nice, certainly every Sunday in the summer when our wonderful church has its services on public lands, I think it's nice, but it may not be legal. So I wonder why we make such a fuss about something that is legal, but it isn't nice. I think asserting, supporting, affirming Black Lives Matter is very important because Black lives up until now, and even now, have not mattered in the way they should have been. I know we don't feel it because we do feel Black Lives Matter. Now, when it comes up to this as an organization, it's this and it's that, I don't think that's our purpose in the sign. Our purpose in the sign is to let Black people know that there's a white community that really feels they matter, whether they live here or not. It's simple and very, very deep and dark and complicated. But I have no trouble, and I can't wait to live long enough, which is not much longer that I have, to really see that Black lives matter as much as my life matters. That's all.
Thank you, Ethel.
Ethel. Thank you, Ethel.
Rowayton would like to speak now.
I apologize, I cannot get my camera on, and there's nothing really more to say beyond Ethel's perfection of a statement there.
Could you introduce
Oh, I apologize.
yourself?
Yes. I live in Darien. I also own a property with my husband in Norwalk and have been following everything that's going on in Rowayton and wholeheartedly support everything that the folks beginning with Allison have said and ended so eloquently with Ethel, and voicing my support. Also just the next step of what else can we do together. I guess that's the other thing that rings in my mind a little bit, of working together from here to do some of these actions, as Ethel mentioned, that, you know, demonstrating that Black lives do matter, because obviously they do. So that's something that just I would like to add.
Okay, thank you.
Priscilla is raising her hand, Mike.
I'm sorry, Tammy?
Priscilla Farrell is raising her hand.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. I don't think there are any other speakers.
Thank you. You know, it really has to be said that this is not, you know, the political messages are the ones that come from the politicians. And a politician like Donald Trump disparaged a group called Black Lives Matter. That there is a repercussion of that and a backlash of that to the community actually angers me. But more than that, this is a constitutional issue. Black people have constitutional rights. This is not a matter of us deciding is this political or not. It's constitutional. Several years ago, when there was a sign, and I think, Mike, you were involved in that said no house in Farm Creek. That was a sign on the fence. It offended me. I worked against the message of that sign, but I didn't bother the commissioners about it and try to get a vote to take it down. The truth is, the people that organized the signage, that designed it, that got it up, that paid for it, that channeled this effort, are not exactly the same as people who have protested. That's what you hope about movements, is that it spawns other ideas and other people to get involved in a cause, again, that is constitutional. We don't put our feet on the necks of people and snuff their lives out and say it doesn't matter. And that's the fury I feel, that this has become an issue that somebody doesn't want to see a sign when he gets home from work and it's on a fence and it was up for a few weeks. Oh, please. There are some repercussions from this that are political, and those are the statements that have opposed the simple right of Black people not to be treated like chattel and animals to be abused. And I'm proud that the community is addressing this because it's difficult and because it really needs to be said. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, Tammy, I think that's it for public comments for tonight.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Just to clarify a couple of questions, the jurisdiction of the fence is granted to the 6th taxing district by the city of Norwalk, and we have had that jurisdiction for many years. I can't remember exactly when. But in the past year or two, we revisit the rules for the fence, and we had a meeting with every nonprofit group in Rowayton, either last fall or early this winter. I'm talking about the fence and what kind of signs we want up there and guidelines as to how long the signs can be up there. It actually started as a result of a concern for so many yard signs popping up like mushrooms all around town. And the organizations that are involved in the nonprofits in Rowayton were very happy with the guidelines that they came up with and were put forth. They weren't changed dramatically from what they were before, but it's local announcements, local events, local promotions. It will be for Rowayton residents and Rowayton organizations. And so that was a community effort to come up with those guidelines. And we even tried to do one for the banner over Rowayton Avenue. But some organizations feel that, you know, it's very expensive to create one of those banners. So we didn't include that in our fence guidelines. So I hope that answers your question.
Tammy, may I add a little to that? That piece of property had been controlled by the city for some period of time. And if we wanted to park there, we needed to file for a permit. The chain fencing, chain across the opening into the field was locked. We never had a key for it. We had to get someone from City Hall to come down and open it. But over the years, we struck an agreement with the city, and they gave us permission to manage the field. So if a church or some other organization or a farmer's market needs extra parking, that field's available to us now with very little red tape. Similarly, at one time, they didn't allow signs on that fence. And they were going to put up a chain link fence, but they and put in a nice wooden fence and gave us control over the signs on the fence. I still report to the city if a tree's down, and they come and clean it out. They mow it regularly. So it's a nice working relationship right now, and it benefits Rowayton. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
All right, then I guess we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the duck pond, affectionately known as the duck pond. And we have over the years,
I have a question.
Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, Liz.
I'm still unclear as to who gave the commissioners the right for the jurisdiction over the signage. And could it be given to somebody else in the community? I feel like you have so many responsibilities as it is, and that I think that other people could have the jurisdiction over the signs and when they're put up and when they're taken down. Was it somebody in the state that said it's the commissioner's responsibility to watch over the signage, or how did that happen?
Well, as I said, the city of Norwalk owns the property, and they have allowed the 6th taxing district commissioners to monitor the property. So it's a city property. We do not own it. The 6th taxing district owns Pinckney Park. We own Bailey Beach. We own the Rowayton Arts Center. We do not own the fence.
So was it the mayor that said that the commissioners should watch over the fence?
Well, it's probably the Parks and Recs.
Parks
John, do
and
you know
Rec.
exactly?
Yeah, this Parks we had understanding. We just for their plate and gave it to community because it was being used mostly by the community. So it was just a verbal understanding. Parks and Recs.
So when
And Liz, if you go back and think about it, we had at one point in time we had neighbors that would cut signs down because they didn't like them. We had neighbors putting up all sorts of signs. They got into political signs. So the organization that the commissioners bring to it has benefited the community, I believe.
Well, I would like to.
And in fact, there was a lawsuit. That used to be a school. Was there. That's why it's called Old School Field. And that school was shared between Rowayton and Tokenique. And it was called the 5 Mile River School District. I think if we asked him, I think it was Aaron. He was a commissioner. There was a big legal battle, but there was a big legal discussion between the city and the 6th taxing district as to who it belonged to. And in the end, they chose not to go to court. And there's been this arrangement. If you recall, about I don't know, maybe about 8 years ago, that changed by the wooden fence. And as you know, we're the legal entity and the elected representatives for this part of Norwalk. When this agreement was reached between the city and the 6th taxing district, that's how it was put in our purview.
Well, I would love to see some documentation on.
Caitlin, you wanted to ask a question?
Sure, I'm sorry, my dog is being quite loud. Liz, are you finished?
I can't
No, thank you, Caitlin. I was wondering if we could go to Parks and Rec and see if they specifically said that it's the jurisdiction of the commissioners, because I think it would be very helpful to have a group other than the commissioners, since you have so much to do on a daily basis, to have another group manage the fence. So if it's Parks and Rec, that would be interesting to know. If it's the mayor, I'm not really sure who it is, but if we could get to the bottom of that, then I think we could take that off your plate.
I'd like to speak to that as a resident and a taxpayer. I think it should stay with the commissioners. And I think that if that's something that should go to a vote to all residents of Rowayton, because I do not think the city of Norwalk Parks and Rec should be controlling what goes up on our fence. I think that Tammy, John, when John Verrill was here, Mike, all the commissioners have done through the years a very good job of monitoring that fence and keeping that park open to everybody, or the parking there open to everybody, from the farmers market to Harvard, the bazaars, overflow of traffic, managing it. They helped build a new fence. They got rid of the chain link fence. The fact that you all of a sudden think that Parks and Rec in Norwalk wants to take over the fence is a wrong thought. And I think you should go down there. And if you want to start something, you should. But I think that should be a vote for all residents in the city, in the 6th taxing district.
Nora, that's not what I meant. I don't think that Parks and Rec should be in charge of the fence at all. Tammy said that she believed that Parks and Rec gave the commissioners, or somehow were involved in who had jurisdiction. I absolutely agree with you that it shouldn't be Parks and Rec in Norwalk that has the jurisdiction. And I think that the commissioners have done a wonderful job with the parking in that lot and have done so many positive things. I think that the items on the fence could be managed by a group of Rowayton residents.
Well, the residents vote for the commissioners, and when they get the next election comes, you can vote them off if you don't like.
Well, or we could send a vote to the entire community, as you suggested. I think that's a really good idea.
But I think that's what elections are for. But I think that there is a process in place. It's worked for a very, very long time, and I think that you should. The fact that all of a sudden you're thinking they have too much on the plate and can't manage the fence, they're managing a process that's been in place for a very long time that has worked. And, I think you find half the people in Rowayton who think that this is a political issue, the other half that do not. And I think racism is a problem in this country, but there's other ways to show it than to take down a fence and start making it political now.
Well, I think your idea about sending it to the community for a vote is a great idea.
Good. The next election is what? Next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Can I ask my question now?
Can you hear me?
Let's go back to where we
Am I off
started
again?
at the beginning, that the commissioners are open to having a dialogue with the community, not on a Zoom call, not on this call, but we would like to have the opinion of others and how we can address it. So thank you to everybody for your ideas, and we will take them into consideration, and we might put it to a vote of the community, but I think keeping it in Rowayton is the way we want to do it. And I again reiterate the fact that every nonprofit in town had recently chimed in on signage on the fence, and if anybody wants to perhaps join one of those nonprofits and say if they would like to have a subcommittee of their organization that has a leadership position on what goes on the fence, that might be a great idea.
Great.
All right, then moving on, unless anybody has any other comments on this, we're getting.
Can I just ask my quick question, since I was
Yes, please.
supposed to speak? I realize you have other things on the agenda, and I don't necessarily care who manages the fence. I think people need to feel reasonably assured coming out of this call that we will be informed of the timeline and the next steps in this. So even if you can't necessarily advise as to what those next steps are, can you at least let us know where we should go for information, who we should be contacting, and maybe an estimated timeline of when you expect to have a decision made on this?
The best place to go for any information regarding the taxing district is our website, Rowayton 6TD. And if you can always email any of the commissioners, I believe our emails have been widely distributed. But if not, it's our initial T. Langalis at Rowayton 6TD, and we would always welcome communication by that method.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then we're going to move on to the duck pond and possible aeration of the duck pond, and our district assistant property manager, Jason O'Donnell, is going to speak to that if you're there, Jason.
Jason.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi guys, how are you? Yeah, so we brought out somebody, specialist in aeration about the duck pond. He suggested putting in an aerator in the pond. The system would have a compressor and 5 pumps throughout the pond, 4 or 5 pumps throughout the pond. And that would eliminate all the duckweed. The estimate came back. Tammy, do you remember what it was? Was it
about 17,000?
18,000? Was that right?
17 and change, I believe.
17 and change. Okay. So this isn't something that's been budgeted for, but if there's interest in the community for removing all the duckweed, I think it's something that we could pursue. I think I would approach the city to get permission to have it installed. It would be on their property, but I think we would need support from financial support as well as support from members of the community.
Okay, terrific. We were thinking this might be a nice idea for a fundraiser. Just to be absolutely clear, the 6th taxing district does not own the duck pond. It's part of the Department of Parks and Recs, but we have worked together with them over the years, helping maintain some properties that sort of border the Rowayton School and the community center and library. And I think we might be able to have a good collaborative effort here as well. And we have had many residents over the years ask for something to be done to the duck pond, and there might be an opportunity to do some fundraising. And we would work together with Parks and Recs, perhaps the Rowayton Gardeners, but we think that, you know, a lot of people would really appreciate seeing no duckweed, algae, whatever else floats upon the pond. We realize that dredging ultimately might be the best solution, but that's a very expensive process that the city has absolutely no interest in addressing. So Jason, thank you very much.
And he did say that's pretty much the only solution. Dredging, it would cost you, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there's not really a good alternate solution other than aeration. Tammy had mentioned solar. That's not really an option for that. It would have to be electrical, but it's a pretty minimal electric bill each month. But and the maintenance would be pretty minimal. It's just the initial install that would really be costly.
Right. Some ideas, or maybe when the pond freezes, we could have some kind of fundraiser skating party. I'm sure we can come up with some creative ideas. All right, thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Jason, where are they going to get the power?
There's a power line that goes right across there, and there's a pole that goes right almost at the center of the pond. They'd be able to tap down from that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That was his belief that he could do that. Obviously, they would need to get permission from the electric company. They would probably put in a meter, all that stuff. But I think it would all be doable.
And he does not think it's too shallow for a aerator?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
And the way they do it, they come the first day and you'd see results right away. They come with a net, they scoop everything off the top. They would get probably 95% of it that first day or two that they're there. And then the aerators stop it from coming back at all. So that would be, the aeration just keeps the water slightly warmer, keeps the water moving, and creates an environment that the duckweed doesn't want to be in.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anybody in the audience have any comment or question about that? Okay, so moving on to the next issue on the agenda, recycling. For months and months now, we have been trying to get Rowayton residents to properly put their recycling materials in the big blue totes. We continue to see a lot of plastic bagged recyclables, things that are not allowed. So we worked with some residents to come up with a little flyer that we are going to probably distribute on the blue bins in the near future. And we really encourage residents not to have their cleaning people put their recyclables in a plastic bag. It just gets thrown away. Such a waste. We have a very conscientious community and people really do want to recycle. We're doing the composting now as well. And so we'd like to continue that. And we are working hard to get people to understand what can and what cannot be recycled and how you're supposed to put it just loose in the bin. So if you see your neighbors are bagging their recyclables, please tell them, do not put your recyclables in a plastic bag. It just gets thrown away. You might as well put it in the trash. Would anybody like to speak to that? Nope. Okay. Then we'll move on. We have pickleball is the next item on the agenda. And we've been approached by a couple of residents looking for a possible place to put a pickleball court. And I will let Mike speak to that and to the presenter.
Good evening, everybody. So this has been a topic that's been discussed for a while. So this is pickleball has been a topic for a number of years now. At first, we didn't really have a problem for it, place for it. I finally did some research and figured out pickleball really was.
Stop. You're still having a lot of bad feedback. No, bad information. Andy's trying to give you some text.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Everyone needs to mute.
You need to mute. You can mute. So pickleball, we have been talking about and looking at options for a while, and the interest has just grown and grown and grown. A number of people in neighborhoods have been putting up small nets and have been playing. Maybe you've seen them. There was some effort to put markings on court 5 of one of our tennis courts, but that court really does get used a lot by tennis, so it really wasn't an option. So I talked to a number of residents, and several of them have really gone and done a lot of legwork. And we have a little presentation for everyone to see that we're going to put on the screen. I want to thank Drew Seath, who will be giving this presentation, who's a big tennis player and paddle player and a budding pickleball player, as well as Tim Widmer, who's president of the Rowayton Tennis Association. You know, they've really done, especially Drew, yeoman's work, and the RTA has given a lot of support to this. And this is a grassroots new effort. And, you know, we're in the early days, but we have to start somewhere, and this is where we are. So I'm going to let Drew take the floor. Drew had a little paddleball accident the other day, so you'll see he looks a little beaten up, but he has a lot to say, and so I'm going to give him the floor. Okay, Drew, I think the floor is yours. Drew?
Unmute Drew.
There we go.
There we go.
John, you have to mute yourself.
I can hear.
There we go. How's that? Thank you, Mike. So I'm Drew Seath. I live 3 Ensign Road. I put together this presentation trying to just help everybody get a sense of the request and the idea, and we'll go from there. So I thought it might be good to just quickly start with a quick review on pickleball. It's the fastest growing sport in the United States. I will tell you that you know, I've heard about pickleball for years, And I will admit to being a bit of a bigot about it and saying, oh, it's for old people, and not really having any interest in it. And during the COVID stuff in June, one of my neighbors bought a net and started, having a game for neighbors to play. And I went out and played and found out how much fun it is. I then went and watched some YouTube videos on it. And in fact, the pros are like 25, 30 years old that play this. It is not just for old people. Let's see. As far as Rowayton and pickleball, my understanding is that at one point people tried to play it on the paddle tennis courts, but there's so much demand for the paddle tennis courts that it became a big issue of contention. And then, as Mike said, Court 5 at Bailey was tried to be used. And then this summer, there have been street pickleball games in quite a few different places in Rowayton. I approached Mike back at the end of July, asking, what would have to happen for Rowayton to build some pickleball courts. And he said one of the first questions is, is there really interest? And so I put up a poll on Nextdoor. I've received over 50 comments on that post, and still I got some today, I think, or yesterday. And I probably got another 25 or more direct messages from people who've reached out to me to say, I saw your post and I really like it. One of the interesting things for me about the post was that unlike almost anything else I've ever seen on Nextdoor, it got 100% positive comments. I haven't seen anybody say anything negative about it. I also did some quick research on what some of the other towns have done. Basically every town around us is putting courts up, and they're getting a lot of use. I then looked into how much space is needed. The court itself is about 20 feet by 44 feet, but they recommend, those are the lines, if you will. They recommend that you have an area 30 by 60 for the actual play. You can technically fit 4 courts inside one tennis court, but it's pretty tough to play if you try to do that. And the actual construction of a pickleball court is basically the same as an asphalt tennis court. And surprisingly, I was surprised about this, but they actually recommend fencing around it, and that on the ends, the fence be 7 feet high, the same height as a tennis court. And lights are often included so that you can get extended play like you do at a paddle tennis court. So then the question comes up, of course, where to build it. The obvious places that we could do it would be Bailey Beach, potentially the community center, potentially Pinckney Park, maybe someplace else. Some people have suggested the school, and I know the school, those tennis courts in the school have been looked at for other things. The challenge with that is that my understanding is that the Board of Ed would only allow the use not during school time. So it would essentially mean that you couldn't use it during the weekdays. The idea then came to look at Bailey Beach, and there is a space over where there's been a lot of tall grass that's been cut down this year several times, over by the kayaks. This is an older map that I got hold of, and you could comfortably fit 4 courts along that. The kayaks are stored right about here now. So the idea that I'm putting forward is that we look into building 2 courts right now, plan to have 4 in case this takes off here the way it has in many other parts of the country. And that we do these first 2 courts down here, near to the Little League field. I did approach Tim Widmer, who's the president of the RTA, and asked if he thought it would be a good idea to have the Rowayton Tennis Association add pickleball to its purview. I think that would be a much easier way to start as opposed to trying to create yet another organization. Tim has said that he thinks that's a good idea as well. If we wanted to at some point, we could separate it out, but it would be an easy way to get started if we just made it part of the Rowayton Tennis Association. As far as the cost, we did get a rough estimate from the company that built the Court 5, and it came in a little bit under $50,000. I asked the question of what if we built all 4 courts now? And he said it would probably be, it wouldn't be 2x the 2. There'd be some savings, somewhere around probably $85,000. So next steps, I'd love to get support from the commissioners to start to look at this seriously and, do scoping and evaluation of whether that location could work, or if there's a better location, look into what other kinds of approvals are needed, look at what funding the 6th taxing district could provide and whether we need to raise funds privately, and then continue from there. Mike, I know Tim wanted to say something as well. Is it possible to let Tim speak as well?
Hey, Drew. Can you hear me, Drew?
Yes.
Yeah, my computer crashed right when you started presenting. Sorry about that. So yeah, no, I believe there is a great surge, as you've presented, with pickleball being a real growing and popular sport. I think there's a lot of community activity for this and a lot of need. We've seen a lot of RTA members express the desire to play pickleball. We've seen it attempted on the paddle courts. We have had a little pickleball on Court 5, as mentioned, which is our hard court. There's some challenges with that, with putting down lines, and there has been a lot of activity on Court 5 this year. So I believe there wholeheartedly that it will be a scenario of, if we build them, they will come. And I think it would really add a lot of value to the Bailey Beach area. And I think the RTA fully supports this next chapter, hopefully.
Thank you, Tim, for those comments. Drew, thank you for all that hard work. I think, we know there's interest in the community. I know, Drew, you've been quarterbacking all that interest and have been the repository for everyone's enthusiasm for this possibility. I think the next thing is obviously to kind of consider locations. We have a big drainage project at Bailey in review, and we can add this to that analysis. So that would really be, I think, the next step for us to pursue, unless the other 2 commissioners thought otherwise.
Tammy, you're muted.
No, I'm good. I would agree with
Tammy was trying to.
I would support. Crazy. Can you hear me?
John, go ahead.
I would support the pickleball courts. Let's move to the next step. It's echoing here. I'm not sure what it is.
Okay, sorry, could I just ask, I didn't catch the number of